recorded for live and subsequent broadcast, available through the Council's website. The IGB is a joint data controller with Inverclyde Council and NHS Greater Glasgow Clyde under the General Data Protection Regulations and Data Protection Act of 2018. This meeting will be broadcast and recorded to fulfil our public task obligation to enable members of the public to observe the democratic process. Data collected during this remote meeting will be retained in accordance with Council published policies available through the Council's website. Members of the IGB are reminded that they should follow the IGB's established protocol, including around the use of the chat facility, and that comments made in the chat facility are visible to all participants in the meeting, which may include members of the public who have also received invites to the meeting. Okay, in that case, if we can start with first order of business, apologies, substitutions, and declarations of interest.
We have apologies for absence from Dr. Jones and also Charlene Elliott with Vicky Cloney substituting. We'll now move on to a roll call before asking for declarations of interest. Can the following members please indicate if they're present at the meeting? David Gould.
Present at the meeting.
Councillor Brennan.
Present at the meeting.
Councillor Moran.
In the chamber.
Councillor Quinn.
Present remotely.
Councillor Reynolds.
Present remotely.
Dr. Metcalfe.
Present remotely.
Giovanni D'Alessio.
Present remotely.
Dr. Ryan.
Present in the chamber.
Kate Rocks.
Present at the meeting.
Jonathan Hines.
Present in the chamber.
Craig Gibbon.
Present in the chamber.
Dr. MacDonald.
Present in the chamber.
Laura Moore.
Present in the chamber.
Adam Smith.
Present in the chamber.
Kenneth Watt.
Present remotely.
Vicky Cloney.
Present remotely.
Jackie McIntyre.
Present remotely.
Heather Davis.
Present in chamber.
And Stevie McLaughlin.
Present remotely.
Are there any declarations of interest?
Thank you for that. Okay, in that case, if we move on to the items for action, the minute of the meeting of the Inverclyde IGB of 30th November 2025, and also the minute meeting of the IGB of 15th December 2025. Are there any points to note on this in terms of amendments or points of clarity that colleagues may have? I'm not seeing any on screen or in the room, therefore can I take it that we are content to accept these minutes of the last two meetings? I'm seeing nodding. Excellent. Okay, thank you very much for that. In that case, if we can then move on to item number 3, the rolling action list. Who would like to speak to this?
Thank you very much. This is our rolling action list that we bring forward every cycle, and it highlights all the main reports and all the main activities of the IGB over the next number of cycles. And beyond that, I wasn't really going to say an awful lot more about it, but happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Craig. Okay, I'll open it up to colleagues. Does anyone have any questions or comments on the rolling action list? Oh.
Thanks, Matt. Can I just create something about the first item, the developments in the board by your development pathways? It's closed, but you bring it back to future meetings.
We'll pick that up in the private session, Paul, if that's okay.
Yeah. Thanks, Kate. Thanks, Paul. Becky.
Thanks. Sorry, I wasn't sure if Craig was going to address it, but I agree with Paul that item, and there was another item marked as closed, which I don't think the work has been brought back yet. So it was just to query whether they should be closed or they should stay open for now.
Are you referring to ADP?
The first one, sorry, there's no numbers to the first one, and the other one that's been closed under Maxine is the update reports in the ADP strategy.
Kate, you can tend to respond to Becky, please.
Yeah, so I think we had a discussion about where ADP sat and the governance, and that sits within the Alliance Board. But we did agree that we would bring regular updates. I think that from that we felt we had a discussion about bringing it to a development session. It is scheduled for the next development session. And we want to have a discussion at the development session about where the updates for ADP actually sit, because they're part of the community planning partnerships. So I felt it was closed for the business of the IGB, but we would be bringing it to the development session.
Becky,
Okay,
you
so,
want to come back?
oh yeah, so my point, just I suppose the governance point is that hasn't happened yet. So it's, I think that was my point about we were asking to approve this, but it hasn't happened yet.
I suppose, I mean, I'm quite happy to reopen it, Becky, but it's not actually for the business of the IGB formal business. This is for the formal business. I'm happy to, the development session is going to give us the opportunity to tease some of the nuances around the interface of alcohol and drug recovery services within the wider ATP, and give us the opportunity to update the IGB about some of the good work that's happening across the board. So I just felt that it was, considering the amount of business that we've got on here, and we're not always keeping our rolling action log up to date, I felt that it was best served. But if the consensus is that we keep it open till we have that discussion at the development session, I'm quite happy to go, but I don't think it's anything that we're going to, it's not an absolute deal breaker in terms of it. We're going to have that at our next development session, which is due in February.
Becky, I think before Becky, I don't know if you want to come in on this, Becky, but certainly from my perspective as chair, I would very much prefer it to show as open. I think for consistency going forward, I think it can be a bit confusing when you look at the rolling action list and it seems that something's completed, but like myself, I'm looking at this thinking it doesn't quite tally with what we know. Would you be content with that as well?
To me, yeah,
Yes.
I think so. I think that is my point, Kate. I appreciate the intricacies of each bit of work, and I think if it's decided that something is no longer needed or possible, then that's absolutely fine to have those discussions. But I think if we've decided to put something on the rolling action list, I would like to stay open until it has been completed.
There's absolutely nodding around the room as well from colleagues, Becky, so I also take that away and do that at our request. So thank you very much for raising that point. Okay, any other questions or points from colleagues on this? I'm not seeing any. Craig, are you wanting to know anything in terms of annual report schedule and forward planning? Is there anything we need to be made aware of on this? This doesn't seem to be able to change it from the last year.
There's a convener, no, I don't have anything else.
Okay, thanks, colleagues. In that case, we can take the rolling action posed, subject to the ADHD discussion. We'll have a private session, and then if we move on to item number 4, the financial monitoring report for period 7. And Craig, hopefully you got some good news for us.
Thank you. Mr. Convener, this is a standard finance paper that we bring forward every IGB cycle, and it covers a number of main areas. It covers the period 7 projected 25-26 outturn position, our current capital position, and our reserves position. The paper also gives an update on the progress against the saving targets to date. As at period 7, we're currently projecting an underspend of £319,000 for the combined IGB budget. Of that, the social care element is projecting an overspend of £811,000, and on the health side is projecting an underspend of £1.13 million. Obviously, by year end, if this position remains, we'll transfer any underspend that we've got to our general reserves and bring it back to an overall break-even position. Within this, there are a number of over and underspends within the budgets. Starting with the social care side of the budget, the main driver for the total overspend is due to the children and families budget, projecting a £3.481 million overspend. This is mainly due to residential placements and child respite overspends at period 7, and this forms part of the overall children and families redesign that Margaret and the team are moving forward. Additional funding from Inverclyde Council as part of the budget process is helping with this overall review. We also have the use of the non-recurring pension monies to assist with the smoothing of the children and families budget, and we're using this to help us within the overall bottom line of the budget. We understand that this will come to an end at the end of this financial year, and this is why it's been factored in primarily into the 26-28 budget process, which IJB members will know about from our development session we had a couple of months ago, and will factor part into the overall budget that we set in March. This is also partially offset by underspends from the older person's budget. Looking at the health side of the budget, this is underspending mainly due to vacancies across a number of the departments. Describing overall, it's now showing a break-even position. However, as we move in towards year-end, we expect this to go into an underspend as we approach year-end. Financial planning, supplies and services are now showing a projected underspend of £300,000, and today the IJB is requested to give approval to add this balance to the temporary post earmark reserve, and this is to assist with the funding of the district nursing grades and redesigns going forward. The next section highlights the HSP's progress to date in the achievement of its in-year agreed savings. As you can see, we've already made good progress on the delivery of our savings. And further to this report, the IJB met in December and they approved VR and VR releases to assist with the final savings to be delivered. This particular savings that we put forward will kick in, will start from the next financial year. We are able to cover this at the moment with an overall bottom line position for this financial year. Section 7 shows our overall earmarked reserves, and it shows we started the year with 17.144 million and we expect to finish the year with 13.815 million based on our current projections. Our total general and smoothing reserves is just a little over £5.85 million, and this represents 2.52% of our total funding and is within our overall guidance between 2 to 4%. Finally, moving on to the capital section, this shows the current capital position of projects that we're working on. The Community Hub capital project has already started, and this section highlights what we've spent today. As always, I appreciate there's a lot of information in this report, and I'll, as always, happy to put any comments or questions anyone might have.
That's great. Okay, I'll open it up. Paul.
Right, so that's a very good report. Looks very favourable. Things look not too bad, I must say. Well, can you pick up on 5.2? You're asked to give projected underspend and transfer that to the balance temporary post earmark reserve for funding district nursing rebate. I think that's the district nursing plan 5 to 6. Did we not get 67? Sorry. Did we not get did the health board not provide, or the government not provide extra funding for that? Have we exceeded that?
I'm very happy to know. Yeah, through yourself, convener, the 5 to 6 is yes, the 6 to 7 no. So we've had to pick that up ourselves, and this is what we're doing. There's a back pay element of that which we've built, is already built into the figures you're seeing here today, so that's effectively covered. It's the recurring element going forward, which is our pressure to us. So what we're asking for here today is to earmark similar to the underspend that we've got to help us do a redesign of that going forward and to buy us a bit of time in order for us to look at that within the overall service redesign.
Can I ask you the numbers, because how are the numbers doing from the 5 to 6s? Because that way in progress this year. The 6 to 7s, do we have a handle on the numbers going forward?
At this moment in time, I can come back on that separately.
Sorry, I think Laura could take this.
That's great. So in terms of the 5 to 6, the whole process is a rational agenda change of policy of the so it's up to the staff themselves to decide whether or not they're going to put themselves forward. So we have had staff who have themselves forward and have been successful, but not all of our staff have at this moment gone through. We don't have a final position on that at the moment. And that is being funded partially from Scottish Government monies, and I think it's 75% being funded, and then we just pick up the rest as well.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Laura. Any other questions from colleagues? I'm not seeing any online or around the room. Craig, if you indulge me, just a quick question for myself, if that's okay. Reflecting on the overall underspend within health and only 1.13 million. I'm just wondering, has there been any impact upon service provision? If you've got the vacancies, has that had a direct impact on patient care at all, can you say? Or is it a case of being able to manage it in terms of the available cohort of staff we have?
Certainly from my side of view, I'm not aware of any impact on service delivery, but I'm happy if maybe the operational.
Kate, that's coming. Thanks, Craig.
So each point when we are looking at underspends in any of the budget lines, we have a discussion about what are the mitigations available around for that underspend, and can we do things differently. In most cases, we have felt that we have made appropriate mitigations. And you have to remember some of the money that has came in, you know, over a period of 10 years. So things have changed and things have modernised, but I wouldn't want to go record to say, because there's always a perception that perhaps that there isn't enough resource out there, but our recruitment crisis that's been going on for some years has made us very, very nimble about offsetting any potential risk. So we look at it from a whole HSCP point of view as opposed to just looking at it in the services. So I hope that provides some reassurance.
No, thank you very much, does Kate. Thank you very much for that. Okay, colleagues, I'm just looking round. If there are no other questions, and I propose we move to look at the recommendations of the paper. Fundamentally, items 1, 4, 5 and 6 are about noting the current position. Items 2 and 3 are approving the proposed budget realignment and approving the specific earmarkings proposed that Paul was already exploring the question. So my question is, are we happy to accept the paper as is, note what's in it, and approve the 2 requests that have been made? Seeing nodding around the room and online. Excellent. Okay, and thumbs up from Gio. Thank you, Gio. Okay, in that case, we can take that as approved. Thank you very much. In which case, we'll move on to page 37 and the exposure at the Inverclyde Centre transition planning. Thanks, Maxine.
Thank you. So this paper is really just to give you an update on the programme of works that will see the closure of the Inverclyde Centre that was planned for January 2026. So we're asking the IJB to note the changes and delay to the scheduling programme to finalise the closure of the centre, to agree arrangements for the transition plan to be presented at a future IJB when those relevant amendments can be made as a result of the delays that we're currently experiencing, and to support the continued governance, oversight and monitoring through the programme board. So the IJB previously endorsed the plan to close the Inverclyde Centre by January 2026, and that was centred around an agreed variation to Inverclyde HSCP's service level agreement with Glasgow City to provide our out-of-hours arrangements for us on behalf of the homeless service. Glasgow City has recently faced some recruitment challenges, and the transition to the new out-of-hours model will subsequently be delayed. The service will continue to phase out the use of the Inverclyde Centre in a planned way and continue towards full use of community-based temporary furnished flats, but complete closure of the centre will be delayed until recruitment challenges are resolved. The transition plan will continue to progress work on all of the identified areas where possible. However, delays are expected in fully implementing the new staffing structure and the full decommissioning plan. The oversight will continue to be seen through the Decommissioning Programme Board, and the EQIA that was conducted in July 2025 continues to be relevant in relation to this work. So in terms of the implications, there will be some additional costs expected due to delay. However, these relate specifically to the savings anticipated from the closure of the Inverclyde Centre. And these will be offset by the postponement of payments to Glasgow City Council for the additional out-of-hours support. There is some risk of transitional disruption whilst the plans are prolonged, that may create continuity risks in operating between both models whilst recruitment is ongoing. The implementation of the new staff model therefore requires careful planning to support the hybrid model whilst maintaining our legal employment obligations, and the risk will continue to be managed through the programme board. There is a significant piece of work ongoing right now in terms of the HR processes of the matching in process, and that's all going on just now. We hope to have that concluded in the next 2 weeks. And that continues to align with our priorities of prevention, early intervention and effective integration of services as per the strategic plan and rapid rehousing transition plan. And I'm happy to take any questions on that.
Thank you very much, Maxine. I take Robert first, if that's okay.
Thanks, Chair. Obviously, I'm disappointed that we're running late in the closure. And obviously see the Glasgow City ACP face recruitment challenges, which we accept. But during that group cold period there, and certainly during the Christmas New Year, Glasgow Homeless Service could not cope with the work it had. It was well documented that they could not find beds for all the people looking for them. Now, if we had this in play, what would happen here in Inverclyde? If they're not in a position to get people in Glasgow a bed, then certainly where would we be in the list of trying to find our constituents a bed?
I'll bring in Kate here at this point. Thank you, Robert.
So Glasgow City's model is completely different from ours. Okay, so we will always provide Glasgow City a bed for anyone out of hours. Unfortunately, they aren't in the same place as we are as a local authority. So I don't think we can make any statements to suggest that because Glasgow are having a significant issue around their homelessness, that the same issue would apply. We are working on a different model around temporary furnished flats. They are relying on a wider sector, so we won't be looking for hotels every night when the staff member is recruited, because Glasgow City have agreed that it would only require one staff. We only have in the region in a month about 18 presentations, less than that, out of hours in a month. That is not Glasgow's experience. So we will always be able to guarantee Glasgow an address for any of our service shepherds.
Can I just get a bit of clarification on that point? Of course, it will not affect us. If there's a problem in Glasgow, we need to offer a service from us. We will not find ourselves disadvantaged or having any problems if somebody comes home within Inverclyde because that's to get through an office in Glasgow.
No, they will. The issue isn't about getting access to homelessness in Glasgow. The issue is my understanding, and I don't really want to talk for my colleagues because they're in an actually very difficult place. It's about sourcing homes for people. We don't have that same issue. So they will have a number. They will go through just like out of hours. Social work services already do stuff. Glasgow City host for the 6 local authorities all the social work arrangements, so it's only an extension to that arrangement. And the thing that has delayed it is the recruitment.
See on that, the Glasgow get more building and the people present themselves homeless in Glasgow and they are getting challenged to go other places. What have to be if I don't talk to people who present themselves homeless? How do we deal with that? If we can't deal with it at the moment, or was it Inverclyde? If we're all in the same boat, then so is that there as well be fit for purpose?
Well, we have never found that, Robert, and we've done that a level of analysis because Inverclyde Centre has been on the table for the last 3 years. We've looked at our own data. What we find, even through our presentation around our right to remain, is that people don't always stay in Inverclyde. Unfortunately, they go to Glasgow because that's where their communities are. So I don't have a crystal ball, but we can only look at our data as it stands, and our data is not presenting that scenario.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kate. And thank you, Kate. And absolutely, I can reflect that as well as a member of the Glasgow IGBC that, as Kate is saying, that where you present does not necessarily mean it's where you end up staying. So we know that Glasgow is very much the most attractive option when it comes to asylum seekers who've been given the legal right to remain as well. So that's where they're presenting, necessarily presenting down here in Inverclyde. It's a good question. Well made, Robert. Thank you. Paul.
For it, start off, better declare an interest as chairman of Glasgow IJB and explain that Glasgow has got particular problems, mainly because of asylum dispersal, concealment asylum dispersal placed in Scotland. Over 90% of asylum seekers are held in Glasgow. There are particular local issues regarding sort of local connections and right to remain and priority waiting lists, so it impacts in Glasgow City. And because, as Kate alluded, there's a community there, people are less liable to, more liable to stay in Glasgow is the problem. So my understanding is that this will affect out-of-hours only contacts and so on. So there's no question of anyone being sent up to Glasgow because it's not going to work quite frankly. So out-of-hours, that's entirely reasonable there. Can I pick up something Maxine said, phasing out at the moment? What does that mean in practice? Have you started reducing the numbers going into Inverclyde? And difficult question with crystal ball, any timescales?
Yeah, so we are currently only out of 24 beds, we're currently only using 5, sorry. So we've started phasing the use of the Inverclyde Centre out pre-Christmas with an anticipation of us starting in sort of the end of January. We were kind of maybe not some delays around January, but we've had confirmation that we're not going to be ready for the end of January with the out-of-hours model. So we've currently got 5 residents in the Inverclyde Centre, and we've started opening up more community TFFs and putting people in, irrespective of whether the out-of-hours model is going to go. So that's where the hybrid model is going to come across. We will start the hybrid support model straight away because we've got more people in the community. We still need to keep an element of staff attached to the Inverclyde Centre because we've still got residents in there. It's anticipated that there are a couple of quite complex needs in the Inverclyde Centre just now, so they might take a little bit longer to get the right accommodation for them. But it's anticipated that we will have no residents and no tenants in the Inverclyde Centre by the end of January, ready so that as soon as our out-of-hours model is ready to go, then we're ready to go along with that. So yeah, we've continued with the decommissioning of the building, irrespective of the out-of-hours being delayed.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, you asked for an anticipated start date. We see that, and please don't hold me to account for this. And that's on the record. I'm not being held to account for this.
Let's perhaps not minute that, shall we? Because to rephrase that, Maxine.
I will rephrase that. So I can't guarantee, but I would assume we are working towards the middle to the end of February. So yes.
I know, Becky and Gio, you've had your hands up first. I'm going to bring in Stevie because I suspect he's going to add to this particular element of the discussion. Stevie, do you want to come in here?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thank you, Maxine, for the report. I think we just need to acknowledge you're trying to do an incredibly difficult thing here. Not closing a homelessness centre or a hostel is very, very difficult. You've got the plans in place. Councillor Moran, the challenges in relation to Glasgow's homelessness services and Inverclyde's homelessness services, while we've got challenges here, it's not on the same scale. I just want to make that really clear. What I'd like to also say is that all of the Inverclyde-based RSLs are standing by to support with the flow of permanent accommodation, which will keep that. What we're dreaming to do is, as long as we're providing permanent accommodation for people, and I believe that we are making the relevant number of allocations at the moment, that we are not, I don't want to say silting up, but we want to make sure that the flow of temporary accommodation, that people are moving through that quickly. And we're going to keep doing that. And that'll be monitored. And it's been monitored very, very closely for a period of time. It'll be increasingly important as the centre closes. But I think the relationship's good. And we're all standing by. We all want to see it working. And just to reiterate, all the housing colleagues are here to support our health and social care colleagues in relation to this, because it is a challenging thing to do, but it's about getting the best outcomes for homeless households, and I think we're going to be able to do that.
Thanks, Stevie. That's very helpful. I'll open up next. Becky.
Thank you, and thank you, Maxine, for the paper. And I reiterate Robert's comments. It's a shame that it's been delayed, but I totally understand it's out with our control. And thanks, Stevie, for your comments. Actually, they're really helpful. My question was just a small thing about in terms of our role today. This paper is obviously for decision. In terms of the decision that we're taking, is that about 2.2 in terms of the transition plan? And if so, what is the proposal for that? Thanks.
So this is for agreement maintenance for transition plan to be presented at a future IGB.
I presume that's what
Yeah.
the decision is, because the rest seems to be noting. So just checking what our role is, what you want us to do today.
Yeah.
Sorry, Kate. Sorry, Kate.
The role of the IGB is the homelessness services is delegated to the IGB to make that decision. So you're absolutely correct. It would be for agreeing that the future arrangements would be brought to the IGB.
I think that's what I mean, because we had agreed that before, because it was all actually for today, wasn't it? So,
Yes.
So it wasn't ready to agree a date, just to agree that's put back. Okay, that's absolutely fine. Thank you.
Thanks, Becky. Gio.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Maxine and Stevie. I mean, a partial overlap, but there is a couple of nuances. So for me, it wasn't clear in the report exactly the entity of the delay. There has been a clarification, though, it's just a early view of what the delay is. But, the question is, so if the delay was to be protracted, will we still continue with this kind of hybrid mode, or would there be any more material changes until we go back to the original plan? So that's kind of one part. And then on 0.61 is, the additional delay. I wasn't clear if the cost is entirely offset. So if it's really we are in a virtually or material no cost increase because there is a good offset, or whether actually we should consider that every month of delay there is actually a considerable cost difference. Thank you.
Thanks, Gio. So open it up to Maxine, and then for the cost part of you, over to Craig on this.
So if I can just come in probably on the cost bit first, just to give a bit of if that's okay.
Thanks,
And then I'll go back to the other bits. So the savings weren't anticipated for this until the end of March. So we've logged all of those savings until then. So we're not actually going to see any detriment to this immediately. The savings that we were expecting, because the staff won't move over to their new contracts until February, the beginning of February. So any impact on the savings really is from the beginning of February, and we're hoping to be a couple of weeks after that really. So there's very little transition in terms of the difference in the savings cost. In terms of the first part of your question, we will, if there's further delay, we will continue to operate in the way that we're operating. We will continue to, the fewer people we have in the Inverclyde Centre, the less staff we need attached to that model. There is this sort of basic running of the centre, if you like, to keep that operating if we need to do that. But actually there's nothing stopping us moving to that community facing model irrespective of the out of hours. We will continue to do what we're doing just now. We will need to keep the Inverclyde Centre open for that out of hours response until Glasgow City pick it up. But we believe that we can do that. It's not the most favourable option, but we can do that without actually having any impact on the community facing integrated model.
Understood. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Maxine. Thank you, Gio. Okay. In that case, I'll just try and summarise the discussion. So,
Sarah, with my light on here, thanks.
Apologies, I never saw that, Francesca, please.
Thanks. So I think thanks so much to Maxine for bringing this report, and also just for your transparency and openness in doing so. I think that's really important just to note that and acknowledge that, because I think what you're telling us today gives us so much reassurance. I think that it was never going to be a sort of indefinite, unquantifiable delay, that it sounds really very much in the room that you've had your finger on the pulse of everything that's happening. I think what I'm hearing is really just that the closure of the Inverclyde Centre is so welcome
in most quarters. That's why I think we're all champing at the bit to get more information about when it's actually happening. But I think I was going to ask, just similar to Paul, about pinning you down to a date, and you've given us as much as you can definitely on that. And I think what I'm hearing from you as well about the phasing sounds like it could be, if it was planned or not planned, but it sounds like that's been really quite positive. So just to, since you've already given a few more details about dates, I don't need to ask that question, but just thanks for everything that you've been able to give us here today in addition to the report. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Francesca. Anyone else or anyone else? I'm not seeing any. Okay, in that case, we'll try and summarise the discussion. Colleagues, thank you for that. I just wanted to let that run because I thought it was a really useful discussion. Just in terms of where we are, so from a financial perspective, it's not impacting when it comes to the year-end budgetary position because we haven't budgeted any savings before the end of March 2026, so there's no concern there. We are hopeful, we're not, it's, as Maxine says, it's not absolutely being held to, but we're hopeful by the end of February we may get a resolution on this. Currently, I believe we've got 5 beds currently occupied and capacity of 24. Yeah, okay. We know that closure, as Stevie has highlighted, is particularly challenging when you have individuals with complex needs. So we take advice of that as well. So hence all the work that's gone into actually delivering this. It's not simply a case of close and then see what happens. So I take great reassurance as chair of the work that has gone into this as well. And then what we're talking about from a constraint point of view is when it comes to colleagues at Glasgow City, IHIB, getting in sufficient resources and support us in out of hours. And currently we are looking at 18 presentations a month. So it's not a big figure, but each presentation is individual, so every single person matters, and that's a person we're dealing with. So it's very, very important to get this right. So colleagues, I think it's pretty, we've had a good discussion. I think absolutely, from what I'm hearing, we can accept the recommendations of the paper as well. Okay, in that case, then if we move on to agenda item number 6, this is improving the council journey. Alan, I believe you're going to speak to this.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Inverclyde Improving the Cancer Journey is a collaborative programme delivered by Your Voice in partnership with Macmillan Cancer Support, the Scottish Government and the Inverclyde Health and Social Care Partnership. The service has currently been supporting the community of Inverclyde who have had a cancer diagnosis since November 2022. The funding allows, grant funding allows for 1.5 full-time equivalent Macmillan Cancer Wellbeing Advisor posts to be put in place who are employed by the third sector through Your Voice. And we're delighted to, the paper is delighted to note to the IHIB that this has now been, funding has been secured for the next 60 months, 5 years for this initiative. The IHIB will be aware that the impact of a cancer diagnosis on the individual and also the families is beyond just the physical diagnosis. It's something that can impact across many areas. So this allows the workers, the wellbeing advisor posts, to support individuals that have had a cancer diagnosis. We know that Inverclyde faces significant health inequalities, and we know that Inverclyde also has a higher all-cause mortality rate and cancer incidence compared with the Scottish average. Also, that half of Inverclyde's data zones are among the 20% most deprived in Scotland. If we see a kind of higher incidence in cancer diagnosis in these areas. Since 2022, the Improving Cancer Journey Service has provided holistic, non-clinical support to people who have been impacted by a cancer diagnosis and their families, and that covers across emotional, financial, spiritual, housing, adaptation types issues. So the next 5-year grant provides stability and allows for continued development of the service, working alongside the HACP services and other services to support the individual. The key features of the service are a holistic person-centred support provided by the wellbeing practitioners. It's face-to-face conversations to build trust and supportive relationships. There's a completion of a holistic needs assessment to understand the individual's priorities. And this is a co-created support plan tailored to the personal needs and circumstances of both the individual with the diagnosis and their family. And the programme has been shaped by people with lived experience, ensuring community relevance. I'm delighted to see that in the paper there's some really positive feedback from service users who have been through the programme to date, and I think that reading through that gives you a real feel for the value of support, practical support, the emotional assistance, and improved access to resources that the service provides. The paper also outlines the proposals in terms of delivery commitments for 25 to 2030, in terms of continuing commissioning through Your Voice to deliver the community cancer wellbeing service across various venues, maintain the advisor level of one-to-one holistic support, and strengthen early identification and referral pathways, including our own integration with the new integrated front door single point of access service. Obviously, we hope to then develop the service and its ongoing training and awareness raising. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Alan. Colleagues. Francesca.
Thanks very much, Chair. Thanks, Alice, for that report. I went up, a few months ago to meet some of the people who go to the Improving the Cancer Journey peer support group up at Port Glasgow Library, and it just, to say it was a privilege doesn't really do it justice, because I think but we get that through this report here as well, the stakeholder feedback in the report and in the later part of it there, and I think just the fact that so many people were willing to say it on time just shows how important the service is to them. So really welcome this and really delighted that we've got that extension of funding. So thanks very much to everyone involved in that. That's great.
Thank you, Francesca. Robert.
Thanks, Chair. I'm good, different from Francesca. Certainly, I've been on my own cancer journey and my own family, and I use McMillan quite a bit, and no words to describe how good they were, But who made the decision to give the grant to third party? We have McMillan people working with us. If I'm wrong, you tell me if I'm wrong. Why did we not keep that in-house? Who's that? Who made that decision to give it to Your Voice? I mean, I don't have a problem, but somebody must have made that decision, because we do have people workers who do that job.
I'll bring Kate in at this point, Robert.
I mean, I think that from what we understand, we'll go away and look at that, but this service has been in place from 2022, Robert, so this isn't not something that's been a recent decision. This is about supporting people, and it's been done in partnership with our local third sector. It's not necessarily as a result of whether we work with McMillan or not. So this is a long-standing service, and I think that the report here today is just to update the IJB that we've got in very difficult financial times across the piece nationally, we've managed to sustain additional funding.
Well, see, we went for a bid. IJB went for a bid to take it, and we're successful. And then we decide to give it to a third party. If I'm wrong, Matty, please correct me.
Alan, do you want to comment at this point?
Yeah, thank you. My understanding, as Kate was saying, this was, initially a 3-year programme that the Scottish Government put in place. The Scottish Government at the time, my understanding was that they were looking for it to be through the third sector. That's why that was put in place at the time. And again, when the continued funding was put in place, we continued the service with Your Voice at the time, because they'd be providing the service.
So what you're saying is that the award is given on the understanding that we awarded the third sector partner.
It was like the funding comes through Macmillan via the Scottish Government. Macmillan were heavily involved in this process of how the service is going to be implemented. So it was a continuation of what was put in place by 2022.
So I think it's fair to say that it's not direct funding to ourselves from Scottish Government.
Yeah.
It's not an NR gift to them.
I just need to clear my mind here. So
That's fine.
We got the award, and it's up to us how we use it. We decided to go a third party. Is that what I'm saying? It's as simple as that. Either that, we never get in house. We give it out.
Alan, you want to come in again?
Yeah, we were provided funding, and it was then discussed when we got it back in 2022
it would go to the third sector and your voice for the provider at that time. This is a continuation, so we had a meeting with Macmillan Cancer Journey about 6-8 months ago about continuation on of the service, and that's when the amount of funding that they gave us was then able for this to continue on for 5 years. So that's why it's a 5-year contract that we can put in place with them. So it was provided that we would give it to a third sector organisation.
That was a condition to that.
I'm not sure if it's conditions attached to it, but that was the conversations that we had at the time.
You know, certainly that come in committee and the past.
Normally these decisions, because of the low value, wouldn't come to committee. And actually, to be honest with you, it was Macmillan has been involved with the decision making to give it to your voice. So it wasn't that we were having any detriment to Macmillan. It was actually they've been involved in this process and were ratified as providing that support. And this is about a continuation of support because we feel that we're getting the right outcomes in partnership with your voice.
I wonder, Robert, if it would answer your question if we were to take this offline and then we could actually revisit the decision process back in 2022. Yeah, I prefer for members to absolutely feel comfortable in terms of what the decision was. There will absolutely be a paper trail on this, so keep that revisit that offline, I've shared with members as well. If that's okay, then we have a clear understanding of how we're here. If that's okay. Paul.
Thank you. Can I just clarify something in the paper? My fault, but not picking up. This is a continuation of the existing contract, is that right? Because when does the existing funding run out? And the funding 1.5 just now, is that the same as it is just now?
The initial contract was for 3 years, so in 2025 that was it coming to its end, and that's when Macmillan again sort of came forward to say that they were extending it. Probably I should have said earlier, it's not just Inverclyde, this is a national programme, because I think most local authority areas have been involved in this in HSEPs. So the funding has now been, we're able to be taking the learning about how funding was used in the first round to be able to extend it over a 5-year period. So it's probably just a wee bit more than what we got before, but it's just we've been able to sort of extend it over a 60-month period.
So the point is that just there's no gap between the old
No, continuation.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Robert, is that legacy light? That's okay. Okay, thank you for that. Okay, colleagues, thank you for those questions. Except from my perspective as chair, I think it's a really well put together and interesting paper as well. It's always good to hear what stakeholders are saying when it comes to getting feedback. And certainly this seems to me from my reading a very impactful service that's being delivered to the community. I think when we look at in terms of the main five concerns raised, money or finance is absolutely at the very top. And you'd expect that given the significant levels of poverty we face within Inverclyde. But certainly the feedback, when you actually look at the global feedback as well, what they're saying, it's really, really good to see. So I very much welcome this. And the fact it's actually a 5-year funding plan as well. We know that when it comes to funding, if it's not a constant stream, then there's also danger with skills and experience. So know that we've got that for the next 5 years. It's a really, really good news story as far as I'm concerned. So subject proviso, I'll take offline to address Robert's question. I think, are we content to note this paper? Excellent. Thank you very much, colleagues. Okay, in that case, if I then move us on to Inverclyde Carer Strategy. This is a report by 26 to 29. This is on page 55 of the papers. Alan, is this yourself again?
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, I'm really, really delighted to be bringing this the carer strategy for 2026 to 29 to the IJB today for recommendation. This is a really, really important strategy for us, and we're seeking approval for Inverclyde strategy, confirming its vision, priorities, and the implementation approach. It's very much been developed through a co-produced process with Carers Gateway, Your Voice, local carers, to ensure their experience and insights have shaped every stage of the strategy and its development. It certainly builds on our previous strategy, 2017 to 22, strengthening its collaborative engagement and focuses on what matters most carers. And I think the really important bit is the vision about a caring Inverclyde where carers are visible, empowered and celebrated. There's a number of key themes in the strategy, and I won't go into great depth because I'm going to pass it over to the Fraser and Loretta who are here today, who really know this strategy and pulled it together on our behalf. But the key themes around the identification and empowerment, breaks on caring, education, training and employment, wellbeing support and equal partnership in health settings. I'll maybe pass it over now to yourself, Fraser and Loretta, who have very much driven forward this strategy with the carers, young carers in mind. So thank you to yourselves.
Thank you, Alan. And thanks for the opportunity to present the strategy today. I'm pleased to speak about something that sits at the heart of compassionate public services and effective social care, and that's the central role that carers' voice has in decision making. Across Inverclyde and across Scotland, unpaid carers play a critical role in sustaining our health and social care system. Their contribution is not peripheral, it's foundational. Because of this, their voices must not only be heard, but they must be embedded within the governance, planning and delivery of our services. And these principles were embedded in the development of this strategy from the outset. Working with Your Voice, over 162 carers took part in consultations with focus groups shaping the strategy. And carers were also instrumental in the writing panel and taking various drafts to carers for comment. And the methodology for developing the strategy was also one of partnership, led by Unity. Your Voice played a central role in its development, and the input of others, including Davis, the IGB rep, David Barclay, and of course the HSEP, in particular the planning and performance team, was absolutely vital. This has resulted in a carer strategy that reflects the priorities of carers themselves, written in a way that's accessible, actionable and ambitious. I'd like to briefly highlight just one of the strategy's intended actions to illustrate how we'll further amplify the voice of carers in the months and years ahead. Champions boards were first developed in Scotland in the early 2010s as part of a national effort to improve outcomes for care experienced young people. They aim to create meaningful opportunities for young people to influence the service that affects their lives. These boards brought together care experienced individuals with senior leaders from local authorities, from health services, education and other public bodies, fostering dialogue and shared decision making. The impact of Champions boards on care experienced young people has been significant and sustained. They've helped shift the culture of service delivery from one of consultation to genuine co-production. Young people report feeling more valued, heard and empowered. Their contributions have led to tangible changes in policy and practice, such as improved housing support, better transitions from care and more responsive mental health services. Importantly, Champions boards have also helped build confidence and leadership skills amongst participants, contributing to personal development and long-term well-being. We intend to adapt the Champions board model for the unpaid carers context and anticipate similar transformational results. Through Unity's piloting of carers Champions boards elsewhere, we've seen that when carers participate as equal partners in decision making, outcomes are improved, services become more responsive, resources align better with real needs, and the systems become more humane and effective. Carers give us insight that no data set or policy report can replicate. They see the day-to-day realities of living with and supporting people with complex needs. Their voices help ensure that the services we design truly meet the needs of the people we serve. The strategy outlines Inverclyde's ambition to build a Champions board locally, and the time to start this has never been better. In December, the Scottish Government published proposals to grant voting rights to unpaid carers, service users and third sector members on integration joint boards. This legislation is expected to come into force in September and implements one of the key recommendations of the independent review of adult social care by giving lived experience members full voting rights. If approved today, the Inverclyde Carers Strategy 26 to 29 will see a Carers Champions Board established in February, building on the significant momentum already created by the way in which carers have been involved in the development of this strategy. This will see Inverclyde as trailblazers, becoming the first IGB in Scotland to actively support and implement these new governance changes, so that those with lived experience can have an equal say in shaping the services that affect their lives the most. With the new legislation and with Inverclyde's commitment to lead the way, we now have a unique opportunity to embed carers' voices formally, securely and permanently within the structures that govern local care. Looking ahead, our ambition is clear. Carers must continue to shape the way that services are designed. Their voices must influence commissioning, planning and evaluation. And new governance structures must not simply include carers, they must empower them. Through co-production, the Champions Board model and the new statutory voting rights, we can build a system that's fairer, more equitable and more reflective of the lived reality of people who rely on it. Inverclyde has a strong foundation. We are leading from the front, and by amplifying carers' voices confidently and unapologetically, we're building services that reflect our community's values: compassion, respect, inclusion, shared leadership. Thank you. Happy to answer any questions from myself, or I should introduce my colleague Loretta Gallagher, who's Head of Carer Services. Thank you.
Before I open up for questions, I'll bring in Kate, if that's okay.
Yeah, so thank you very much, Fraser and Loretta, and I know that we are absolutely delighted with the form and the format of the report, but I just wanted to kind of come back that we're not really here today to debate the involvement of the voting rights of carers. We're here to agree the carer strategy, and I know that that's a very live issue that's going on now, but I don't want to detract from the business of the IJB today, if that's okay.
Thanks, Kate. Okay, I'll open it up. Colleagues, do you have any questions or comments about the strategy?
Okay.
Becky, and then Heather.
Thank you so much for the paper and for the strategy, and for coming to present it today. I'm delighted with it, as everyone else is, and really welcome it. Thank you. I just had a question about, because obviously what I also really like about it is there's really clear action plan and things that need to be delivered, which I think is great. So just in terms of how these will be monitored, is that proposed to be through the Champions Board, and what's kind of the governance or oversight for that? Just thinking about if there are any points where these aren't being met, then what's the routes for escalation? Thank you.
Loretta, you want to come in here?
Yeah, we already have a carer strategy action implementation board in place that was monitoring the last strategy and also look at the sort of development of this. So I envisage that governance would be through that structure moving forward, so that we can check in on the action plans. The Champions Boards, we would anticipate would have a vital role in that group as well, be a rep from the Champions Board with that lived experience, and being able to comment effectively on how they feel the strategy is taking shape, because it was written by carers. That's best that when we look after governance, it's evaluated by carers as well.
I'll bring in Kate at this point as well. Becky, does that answer your question? Sorry, first of all.
Oh yeah, I don't know if Kate wants to. Yeah.
If I just add on that Loretta is a very valued member of our strategic planning group who brings back the actions and it's for the strategic planning group to look at the governance around the outputs of the future Champions Board and the existing carers group. So just to provide you with that reassurance.
Great, thank you. So it'll be up through that way through to the partnership. Brilliant, thank you.
Thanks for the question, Becky. Heather.
Thank you. Mine is around the lived experience unpaid carers group who feed into involve Inverclyde. So once we had the final draft, which took place over a few months, obviously with changes being made, I met with this group to get their feedback on the document, because as being said, this document has been written with carers, by carers, and they've been front and centre. But more importantly, we told them we'd be transparent. So it was only right that we went back with the draft strategy for them to look at and decide if there were any comments they had, whether it's good, bad, and indifferent. So at this point, we had no introduction. I hadn't written that at that point. it was well received, it was user friendly, they liked the graphics, the layout, in particular, the one planned vision on a page. However, this did trigger one particular carer, and I've spoken about this to Alan, around the support, whether involved in the care planning and discharge process. And this particular carer had come up to visit her husband and been approached by a nurse and told there was a meeting to take place. So she was ushered into this room, a consultant, a registrar who she recognised but not the consultant, and the nurse. And they started to speak to her about using typical health language. And she didn't. I said, why didn't you stop them and ask for an explanation? And she said she didn't want, she felt stupid, and she didn't want to appear stupid, and was worried that any plans that would be made would be taken out of her hands. So for her to know that she would have equal partnership in the health settings was a huge, that was just one carer, and I dare say there's many more out there. But that to me was a training issue for staff. And something else that they said was there's not a huge amount of corporate speak, which is something that carers will pick up. Positive points made, as I say, they liked the pan and the page. They were glad to see they were going to be supported around the hospital discharge. There was another plan in there, they involved Inverclyde. They wanted to see where exactly they fitted in the plan of Inverclyde, because carers come to groups and they put their points across, but they don't know what happens to that after that. So they wanted to see where they're valued, where they're seen, where they've been supported through Inverclyde. They felt the strategy was reflective of carers' voices rather than service providers' views, which was a big point. They were very appreciative of the term respite being replaced. They felt that the term a breakaway caring role was user-friendly, but more importantly, took away the feeling of guilt that they had when the word respite is used. It looks as if they're not coping, and that the person is being taken into another place to be looked after because they're not capable. A break in your caring role makes it perfectly clear it's for the carer, not the cared for. There's a couple of points that they felt should have been included, which are included. The one was the legal aspect. A carer wanted to know why was the financial aspect of her managing finances for the very first time in her married life. She'd never had to pay a bill or worry about anything. Her husband was ill, was actually incapable of making these decisions, and she didn't know where to start. Power of attorney again was mentioned, which it always says. We queried abbreviations throughout the strategy. I pointed out that in the very beginning, it's written in full, Integrated Joint Board, Health and Social Care Partnership. But as you move in, it's not, it's initials. So we thought a glossary would be advisable, and that's now been added in. Finally, I personally wanted to see if carers saw themselves in this strategy. Was there a part of this that they actually saw anything that they had spoken about or themselves within the strategy? And every single one of them said they could point to a bit. And I have to be honest, I felt quite emotional at that, because I think that's the first time I've ever seen a legal document being described as one user-friendly, readable, but I see myself in that. And to me, that meant that we had actually completed the job that we set out to do. And I, for one, am extremely proud of the strategy. I am. Although we only play a small part in it, the carers are the focus, but I'm extremely proud of it. Thank you.
Ella, can I just thank you for that, because it's brilliant, frankly, to hear that, to get that feedback, because when you read the strategy document and it talks about being trauma informed, it talks about the importance of realistic medicine and how it's been collaborative, but actually having you here today as witness to that, and effectively, yeah, it has been collaborative, it's absolutely reflecting carers' experience. I'm a carer myself, so I'm reading this document and thinking, this is absolutely fantastic. And to hear that it's actually doing what it says it has been done, and you're getting that back to us as a board, that's fabulous. So thank you so much for doing that. That's really, really good. I mean, from my perspective, certainly, It's an excellent document. There's so much in it to be absolutely proud of and to reflect on, and the fact there's a detailed action plan, it's reflecting carers' experiences, it's what's important to them. For me as chair, that's fantastic. So I very much welcome this document, and I think looking around the room on the line, I think we all do. So an excellent piece of work. Francesca, before I start monologuing anymore, please come in.
No, thanks, Chair, and thanks so much to everyone for that presentation. It was good to get the national picture from Fraser and Loretta. It was lovely to have you here today as well. I know you're doing the team are doing great work all around Inverclyde, even though you haven't been established here for a particularly long time. So it's brilliant to see the impact that you've made when I meet you and your staff out and about in the community, and just to get that input there from Heather, who's here, Brucey regularly as a member of the IGB, but to get that insight from yourself, that attention to detail, that really laser focused approach that you obviously have taken to producing this piece of work. And then I think just Inverclyde's really lucky to have people like yourself and others quietly going about the business of for people here in health and social care. So no, thanks very much.
Thanks, Francesca. Okay, so there seems to be a lot of love in the room for this strategy. So can I take it that we know the contents of the report, we approve the strategy, and absolutely recognise the development of this report as a positive example of collaborative working? I'm getting lots of nods. Okay, thank you so much for that, colleagues. In that case, if we move on to agenda item number 8, this is primary care primary services Inverclyde HSCP. And Alan, you're up again.
3 in a row, I get to keep the microphone. Thank you very much, Chair. The following paper provides the Integration Board for an overview of the primary care pharmacy services in Inverclyde HSCP and details the work undertaken in prescribing cost efficiencies. The paper, the key themes and developments, is quite a wide-ranging paper, and it covers across service transformation, optimising delivery, prescribing quality improvement, cost efficiencies and financial pressures, prescribing efficiency plan 25-26, and also additional savings and engagement, and also notes the notable achievement and some of the challenges that the Inverclyde HSCP prescribing team is currently undertaking. And I'm very pleased for IGB that Margaret Maskey, our lead pharmacist here, is going to take us through the paper today, just to pick up the high notable points. Thank you.
Thanks, Alan, and thanks for inviting me along today to go through the main points here. So this is just an overview of what our service of primary care pharmacy service delivers, with a bit of a focus on cost efficiencies because of the financial pressures linked to the prescribing budget. So just running through main points, I realise it's quite a long paper, so I'll just run through main points. NHS GGC has had prescribing support teams for over 20 years. So we have been working on this type of work for quite a long time in terms of the improving safety, quality and cost effectiveness of prescribing. And it's important that we keep that focus and that they delivers on this sort of safe and efficient prescribing. In 2016, we had additional funding from the Primary Care Improvement Plan to deliver pharmacotherapy services. Because there are levels of pharmacotherapy services, less complex to more complex, and because to deliver everything which is in the MOU would require significantly more funding, we have to have a plan, quite a structured plan, to make sure that we are using the funding that we do have in the optimal way. And so we have worked quite hard over the last few years to develop our skill mix, so maintaining our focus on safety, quality, cost effectiveness, but also input to the multidisciplinary team and working on those levels of complexity of work, which supports mainly the GP practices, but others within the HSCP as well. So just sort of moving on to the sort of transformation And this again is in line with our NHS GGC paper. We're continuing to standardise our processes and improve our skill mix, and we're still working, that's an ongoing task to deliver this. We've recently developed a pharmacy hub specification to support our hub and to make sure that it's consistent across all of our GP practices. I have put in a few figures about what our hub and what our pharmacists do in practices. So on a monthly basis, we have around 2,000 medicines reconciliations by pharmacy technicians in our hub. So this is work that used to be done by GPs and then started being done by pharmacists, and more recently is being done by pharmacy technicians. So moving that skill mix makes it more efficient. We also have some outpatient letters still being done by pharmacists and practices, and the aim is to move that to our hub over time. Other things that the pharmacists do, as they are freed up from doing this sort of lower complex work, then they work more to deliver polypharmacy medication reviews, care home medication reviews for patients living with frailty, patients living with pain, with respiratory disease, and all to improve patient outcomes and to optimise the use of medicines and reduce the waste of medicines as well. So when we've done some surveys from general practice and the multidisciplinary team and patients about feedback for our service. So out of the patients, the last survey we did was, I think, in June. Patients 100% satisfied and happy with the support they had. GP practices and FDTs 84% satisfied, either somewhat or very. And some of the comments is that the hub is working well. GP practice requests for more pharmacy time if possible, but that depends on the resource that we have. Suggestions for improvements in communication, reducing acute requests and reducing medicines waste. So the feedback from the survey that we have will inform how we develop our service going forward. In terms of quality prescribing policy improvement, we have worked with our GP colleagues on antibiotic prescribing. We've done some data analysis and audits of prescribing against formulary and guideline, and then fed back to GPs. And this has actually been quite successful, so successful we were held up as an example of good practice in a national meeting on antibiotics recently for the work that we've done there. We've also done quite a lot of work on opioid pain medicines and medication reviews, and again it's something that we've put a bit of focus on and had some success in terms of awards for the holistic approach that we're having to patients with pain about their medicines, but also other things that they can do to support themselves around their managing their pain. And again, this has had some success in terms of the prescribing of medicines and the input the outcomes for patients. We also have done some quality prescribing work on polypharmacy, on waste and on respiratory. Moving on, just a bit around prescribing pressures and cost efficiencies. Medicines expenditure is an increasing financial pressure. We think that there's cost and volume inflation year on year, and so we have a prescribing efficiency plan every year. This is developed at an NHS GGC level about the topics that are included, and it consists of a number of medication switches in GP practices involving patients, and excluding those patients that there would be any detriment. So there's no detriment to the patients in the cost efficiency switches. We also do targeted medication reviews as well. When for the 24-25 efficiency plan, our target was 1.3 million and we achieved 1.1 million, so we're close to achievement. We have a plan we're working on just now for 25-26, and that involves the repeat prescribing local enhanced service for GP practices, which is about reducing waste and delivering medication reviews for patients at risk of adverse effects from their medicines. And we also have again a programme of switches and reviews. In the appendices, these are all broken down into detail. I won't go into any of that detail, but all of that detail is there. Additional work we're doing is with our care at home team and requesting referrals when care at home staff and district nurses as well are in patients' homes. If they notice that a patient has an awful lot of medicines in cupboards, they're stockpiling, we've asked them to refer on to us so that we can do a proper medication review with that patient. We also have noticed that our care home prescribing costs have been going up recently, so it's something that we want to target in the future, in the next few months, about increasing the medication reviews we do for care home patients. We also have a support worker who is visiting care homes, looking at their stock and their cupboards to reduce the waste that they send back to the community pharmacies on a monthly basis. And we will soon be having a increased public engagement via stalls in the health centres, just to inform the public about their medicines a bit more, ask them if they would like a medication review or any advice on reducing waste. And I think that's mostly it. We do have, just finishing off with the meetings that we're involved in, we have a quarterly prescribing group in the HSCP where we look at our, again, safety, quality, cost effectiveness of medicines. We have a locality group meeting where we meet with primary care pharmacy meets with community pharmacy colleagues and hospital pharmacy colleagues, so that we're working across sectors. We have a non-medical prescribers forum where we can speak about topical issues with all our non-medical prescribers, so GPs, but other professionals who prescribe. And we have a regular meeting with our social care colleagues as well about the safe use of medicines by social care professionals too. I think that's it. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much for the paper and also that presentation as well. Really good to hear a level of detail on the work that's going on. We'll be multifaceted. So what I'm going to do is open up and see Paul. I see your hands up already, and then Francesca.
Thank you very much for that report. I declare this was a proper GP in a previous life. Really interested in here. First of all, I commend the work you've done, particularly the fact you're predicting break even, because I know the prescribing costs have been very long term, but you've put it mildly. Couple of things to pick up you said in your presentation there. You talked about the restrictions of the memorandum of understanding and the finances going with it there. And you talked about the work you've done in the previous years, particularly in things like lidocaine, you just see it there. But I see going forward in the current year, it seems to protect us, particularly in carrying on that work with the lidocaine be prescribing. Also, the other thing that sticks out is compliance is over-ordering. I know it's not just an Inverclyde issue, but what's happened there, if you could possibly say there, and possibly say a bit more about the work you're doing in the care homes. Thank you.
Oops. Yes, the lidocaine plasters, we achieved quite a big drop over 24-25, and Inverclyde had quite a high use. Some of that is because GPs were using lidocaine plasters because they thought it might be a safer alternative to opioid prescribing or NSAID prescribing. However, when we've actually done the work to reduce the prescribing in lidocaine plasters, we found when we've looked at the alternatives, there hasn't been an increase. So it has been successful in the way that it hasn't led to, I guess, what some of the GPs might be worried that it would do, that it would be swapped for another medicine. But yes, there's still a bit of work to do on the lidocaine plasters. We reduced by, I think it was 57% in 24-25. We haven't reduced as much in 25-26, but it is on the draft plan for 26-27 again. So it's probably something that we're going to have to pick up again and have a bit more messaging around for GPs and for the public as well about how these medicines are of limited clinical value, and that it's for people who are on them, then we need to speak to them about a trial just to see what benefit they're having, because they're very expensive and they have poor evidence for chronic pain. So yeah, that's something that we're going to continue with. The care homes work. Currently, we have a pharmacist who has been doing some medication reviews on antipsychotic medicines in care home patients, as they are sort of higher risk medicines, and also on the lidocaine plasters. And she's also had quite a sort of significant input into the HSEP multidisciplinary team for care homes. Next year, we want to increase that across not just one of the pharmacists, but across all of the practices, and all of the pharmacists to be doing reviews for care home patients. Our aim eventually would be an annual review, but I think we're not quite there yet, and I don't want to promise that for next year because I don't know if we're going to be able to, but that would be the longer term aim, that the care home patients would have an annual medication review, and that review would involve the pharmacist, but also the pharmacy technicians doing what they can before passing on to a pharmacist. So again, a kind of more skill mixed approach. So that's something for going into next year. The appliances were on, and the overuse of appliances were on the savings plan for this year. In every area of GGC, instead of going down, the costs going down, they have all gone up. And there has been increased prescribing of appliances. When we've looked at it locally, it's diabetic sundries mainly that have gone up. Possibly the sort of Libra type things are going up. Stoma appliances and incontinence appliances. So we do have some work going on in the practices with our support workers, just doing reviews, looking at the appliances and how often they're being ordered to check that it's they're not over ordering or overuse of them. However, I believe those will again be looked at next year, and I believe the central prescribing team are doing a bit of work looking at different areas to see if we can get a bit more intelligence, a bit of a more focused approach to these, because whatever we've been doing, it hasn't really worked this year. So that will probably go into next year.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Oh, Francesca, again, I noticed Sandra put her hand up first. Apologies. So if it's okay, I'll bring in Sandra and then I'll bring in yourself, if that's okay. Sandra.
Hi, thanks a lot. I don't have a question, but as a previous member of Margaret's teams, thanks for the report, Margaret. I retired about 4 years ago, So I'd like to thank you for this detailed and all the data that's there, to allow the rest of the board to see how much work your team does, and acknowledge and the aims that you focused on, patient safety and quality and efficiency. I know how important that is to you. So from experience, I know how hard the team work, and it seems that that's exploded since I left 4 years ago. So it was a great team to work with, and it's really good to see you here today. Thank you.
Thanks, Sandra. Always good to get that professional context as well, so thank you very much for that. Francesca?
Yeah, it's really good to get this report, and it's really interesting, I think useful for us. So thanks very much for bringing it today. I'm just thinking some of the sort of story that it's telling is about, measures in place to try to tackle waste and efficiency over ordering that's sort of almost like baked into the system. And I'm just thinking, I suppose it's just to see, it sounds as if it's quite labour intensive when you're talking about it, to try and tackle this. It sounds, if I'm picking up correctly, quite a lot of manual work, looking at cupboards, having stalls, having stickers, trying to put, I suppose, onus on patients to say, come forward, that they've potentially, got too much in their own cupboards at home, not just the care home ones. Is there capacity within the system really to get that efficiency that this report is looking for? And am I right in thinking a lot of it is quite manual? Would you say that there aren't really sort of like NHS Greater Glasgow and NHS hasn't had investment in IT systems or data to get the sort of results that you're really going to be looking for?
It's quite a tricky one. Waste. I think we've been talking about medicines waste for as long as I've worked in primary care, which is over 20 years. So there is waste in the system, but that is possibly due to the number of different parts, where somebody is prescribed something, maybe by the GP, and their prescription is dispensed by the community pharmacy and might be repeat prescribing, so they might not get a review every time that they need, and when they're requesting their medicines, they might feel they request all of them, but actually if we had a bit more of the medication reviews, they might not need all of them because their condition changes over time. The care homes as well, they do their orders. And again, we do training for them, and we support them with their orders, but it's possibly easier for them just to order what they think the patient needs rather than or order everything the patient needs rather than what they actually need. So I think the key is medication reviews, the ongoing medication reviews, and it is the whole team. It's not just my team that should be doing this. It's encouraging the whole team to do that. So that's the GPs, non-medical prescribers, community pharmacies, care home staff. So it's and also getting the patients sort of highlighting it to the public as well to ask for a medication review, because often patients, especially as they get older, frailer, don't need as many medicines. So something like their blood pressure tablet, which was absolutely fine and appropriate for a good number of years, when they get older, maybe frailer, it may be that it's lowering their blood pressure just a bit too much and contributing to their falls. So the key, I think, is the continual medication review, and not just by pharmacy team. And that's how we probably tackle the waste better.
And that's probably a capacity
It's a wicked problem that we can't not look at, and we need to move forward with. But that's how we have to do it with people. It's maybe part of just the daily work of people to have that that focus in their minds about what is it that the patient really needs, and asking the patient what their priorities are. Yeah.
Hector, you want to come in at this point?
Yeah, just on what Francesca said, GP practice systems do have usually filters in place to pick up when people are over ordering. But as Margaret says, when people are ordering things that are on the prescription that they're just not using, but they're still ordering, it doesn't really pick up that. So as you said, Margaret, it's a very complex system that involves community pharmacies, care homes, GP practices, carers, we mentioned earlier, so that it is a really complex issue. I think Margaret also picked up another thing that review is really, really vital. 20% of our hospital admissions are linked to patients' medicines and side effects or interactions. And the only thing really that picks up that, particularly as people get older, is regular review and actually deprescribing and moving unnecessary medication. So that's really important. And just I suppose another positive thing for Margaret's team, and she mentioned some of the feedback and the really positive feedback from patients, and she did say that, I think you said 84% positive feedback from GPs, but the only negative feedback really from GPs is that we want more of you. So it wasn't really negative feedback about the service, it was actually we want more of the service. So I think that's really important to say.
Thank you, Francesca, for that question. Hence, thank you very much for bringing in the second, Robert. Just reflecting as a board, last year we had, I agree with Glasgow Health Board, that is, we had the development session where we looked at the challenges of polypharmacy. And a couple of stats that stood out to me was that for Glasgow and Clyde, at that point, 20% medicines that we prescribed were entirely ineffective, and only 50% were being taken, which gives us a sense of how big a challenge it is. For me as chair, I'm now reflective of the potential comms piece that's associated with this in terms of how we educate and influence and hopefully change behaviours in terms of patients and carers, and also with colleagues as well, because there's clearly, we have a challenge and that's really easy to get onto medicines, but when it comes to coming off it or being on the right medicine or changing those discussions, that seems to be the nut that's tough to crack. I think it's fair to say that I'm seeing nodding from colleagues as well, clinician colleagues. I'm just looking on to make sure I'm not going off in one here and not monologuing again. But yeah, it's very much a challenge that we very much face, but our opportunities here. Okay, but again, great work, multifaceted. Robert, we'll bring you in.
Hi, thanks, Chair. Obviously, it's a great paper, anything that sets out to make a savings, we have to accept it. As long as there's no kind of casualties along the way, and I can only tell you that as GP practitioner, I have to phone up and say for a prescription. Before that, the pharmacist will contact me and say, by the way, your script ready, come and pick it up, right? We don't do that anymore. Quite honest with you, there was no consultation on that. They just run out of tablets, and that's how I found out. But having said that, I'm quite compass mentis, and I can phone up and I can tell them, and you've got to name the medicine you want. I can do that. But my worry going forward is, and maybe Hector can help me here, is somebody might fall through that crack, somebody might not be that ability to phone up and make sure they get the prescription for, and they might take ill, they could live on their own, there could be a lot of reasons. So I'd like sort of some reassurance that there's nobody going to fall through the crack here. If they need a medication, they won't be able to get it, and that's I don't forget reassurance today, but I would like to get somebody offline or to reassure me that nobody will lose out because we're in an ordinary system and you have to phone up to get your own prescriptions.
Hector, do you want to just respond to that, or do you want to take that offline?
I mean, you can take it offline. I think that's one of the, usually in these types of situations you address. So there are good communication networks between GP practices, community pharmacies, carers, social work, and when we identify issues that patients are having accessing medications through, because there are multiple different routes from ordering online to ordering by phone to ordering in person to getting your pharmacy to do it. So there are lots of different ways to access medicines. So I think there are lots of systems in place to try and make sure that we don't, that nobody is left behind and nobody is. Yeah. I'm happy to pick that up offline with you.
I've checked the way to online now, so like what went there. Not you, but maybe not waiting that ability.
Thank you for that, Robert. Thank you, Hector. Okay, colleagues, in that case, there was a really informative discussion and an excellent paper and presentation. So thank you for that. And I think it's fair to say we can absolutely note the two recommendations of it. Okay, in that case, if I move us on to agenda item number 9, Kate, over to you.
Hi, thank you, Chair. This is the Chief Officer's report. This Chief Officer's report deals with matters that we haven't felt that required a substantive agenda item, but seeks to kind of update the IGB around our delayed discharge process, some of the work that we've done around all in the same page, but links into our cancer journey and links into the work that Margaret's doing in her team. They're doing a fabulous job, Margaret, may I add. I seen them in action a few months ago and I was really impressed. I was being curious and was in Port Glasgow and an alcohol drug recovery services review. So I just want to start with the delayed discharge position. Inverclyde continues to be in a strong position, but just before Christmas, or for a few weeks, from probably about November, December, we found that our adults with incapacity delays, which are complex delays, were higher than our standard delays, and we probably got up to about 6 more than we would normally see. But in coming out of Christmas and on our return in New Year's, our AWI delays continue to be at the same level, which is roughly around 9. And coming out of the new year, we had 1 standard delay, so it's going back the way to where it was prior to it. But again, it just shows you the complexity. If we've got a lot of complex, particularly younger adults that can't make decisions, they end up becoming delays. But we are actually looking at our own processes at this moment in time and to see if we can do something different in this space. So we don't, any delay, whether it's AWI or a standard delay, it's not necessarily what people want and who are in hospital and are waiting to go home or to go somewhere else. So within this period, we felt it was important to acknowledge that we had reset, which was in December, which was to try and clear the decks and learn from some of our processes and our improvements. And I think that I'd just like to thank the staff that did that within Inverclyde. We required them to work over weekends and in the run up to Christmas and evenings. That's no. It's quite a challenge, you know, for people in their family lives. So we did get some learning out of it. We felt that the interface around our acute discharges were much more streamlined into our community when we had the benefit of an advanced nurse practitioner in acute. So there was some learning. And as part of the wider reform proposals, we have new projects that we were delivering to prevent unnecessary admissions and support early discharge. And we're seeing some early indications of positive impact on delayed discharges. And not necessarily the numbers, because you couldn't really get any better than 1, you know, but about the time. The time that people are delayed, we're hoping to do some reduction around that. Today we're sitting at 4. So that is where we are with delayed discharges. all on the same page. I felt Lauren Moore and I had a discussion and felt it was again something that would be interesting to the IGB about are all on the same page and how do we collaborate and to support palliative care in care homes. Because traditionally, a few years back, you would find that people were getting admitted into hospital from care homes, and that was their choices to go into a hospital where they were being close to the end of life care. So we're really proud to say that only one person ended up in hospital and didn't choose to die in the area that they wanted. So that is quite a significant service. That service is a partnership between Argyll Hospice, ourselves and the Care Home Collaborative, which is the wider JJ&C. And finally, we felt it was important for the IGB to be aware that we're doing a review of our alcohol and drugs recovery service, and we've got clear ambitions and clear outlines about what we would want. So this is about how can we do more in our partnership space? How do we work with third sector? How do we work across that whole system? How can we integrate our access? Because we're doing work at our front door for our adult social care and health services. What would that look like in the future for our residents that require alcohol and drug recovery services? Prescription management, which Margaret's team will be involved in helping us to look at that. How do we support people leaving the service, because it's not always about just discharge. We always know that we need to give people the opportunity to come back when they start just going into crisis. How can we start being much more community-based and community-centred as opposed to being in a clinical environment? And a really important element about how do we educate the wider community and their understanding of our services, particularly where it links to stigma, and then looking at what is our existing values and mission, and where does it align with our strategic plan. So we hope that we will take that work forwards, and we'll be interested in seeing some of the outputs now. I've included, or Maxine has included some photographs about the level of engagement within this. So that's all. Any questions in this area? But it's just really an update to let you know what's going on at this moment in time.
Thank you, Kate. Paul, you're straight in again.
Me again, I'm afraid. Right, sorry. Just come back to 4.2, the number of people who are going to fly not in their own beds. That's quite exceptional. Really an improvement, because the first segment, sort of Laura Creed said, no one dies peacefully in A&E, so that's really what's been commended. So that's very good work.
Thank you, Paul. And I think Laura will take that back to the partnership.
Absolutely, and I'll take it back to the group that meet every week, so that can come up.
Thank you for that, Paul. I'm not seeing any other questions. Just wanted to reserve that's okay. Just in terms of adults with incapacity, the impact that's having on our delayed discharge position, I think it's fair to say it highlights the importance of power of attorney.
It certainly does, and certainly, I mean, I would suggest to everyone on the call that power of attorney and our carer strategy, there's a big focus on Unity are taking that forward for us at every opportunity. So my thanks to Unity. That was one of the things that struck me when we first came in about trying to get the right information out, because there's a lot of misinformation. Unfortunately, for some of our adults with AWI, we've probably missed the boat about the power of attorney, and power of attorney is always just associated with older people, whereas there's some of our adults that require it too. So many of our delays, AWI, are younger adults, roughly around 45, 50, as opposed to older adults, and probably it reflects some of our challenges that we've had around inequality and trauma. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Kate. Okay, in that case, thank you so much for that paper. We note that.